الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله ولا أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So continuing from where we'd left off last week, and just to give a very quick recap if you like, the actual subject that's been advertised is called Reflections on Dua. And this was a deliberate subject that I chose because it's a vast subject, and it allows, due to the nature of dua, which many times we don't understand, it allows us to cover pretty much every part of Islam that affects us on our day-to-day lives. Last week we discussed very briefly the idea of Usul ad-Din and Furu ad-Din, which of course everyone is aware of. But we explained it just a little bit differently, where we've got the idea of Tawheed, which everyone is aware of. Then you've got Adla Ilahi, Adala we call it. And you've got Ma'ad or Qiyamah. In the middle you have Nubuwah and Imamah. And Nubuwah and Imamah are manifestations or helpers to Adala. And Furu ad-Din falls into the idea of Adala and falls into the idea of Nubuwah, which is where we got it from, and from Imamah, who protect it and provide further clarity on the subjects. We mentioned that if you consider Islam or Usul ad-Din to be a car, Furu ad-Din is the fuel. And if you haven't put the right fuel into your car, then clearly you're not going to be able to move from A to B. We mentioned last week, and I believe these videos have been uploaded to YouTube, so instead of me spending time repeating, you can find them on wherever they are. Last week I mentioned quite a number of times a dua by the name of Dua Adila. Dua Adila is quite famous, all of us know it. Sadly, normally we recite it when someone is about to pass away. Actually, we should be reciting it all the time. And I think one of the reasons why we tend to recite these du'as at specific times is because we don't understand what the value of this du'a is. Because we don't understand what we're actually doing. When we come in on Thursday and recite Dua Kumail, yes, of course, we read the translation on the broadcast, but we don't think about it. We don't reflect enough. Every time we recite a dua, for example, a dua or a ziyarah, when we say ashhadu annaka, for example, we testify, we make a shahada, for example, to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. We say, ashhadu annaka qad aqamta as-salat wa atayta az-zakat wa amarta bil ma'ruf wa nahayta 'anil munkar wa ata'ata Allah wa rasulahu hatta ataka al-yaqeen. When we say this is not a small statement. It doesn't just mean that, oh, Aba Abdullah, I know, I testify that you established the prayer, you gave the zakat, and you obeyed Allah and His Messenger with certainty, and all of these things. Whenever we're reciting a dua, it's not just words. We're speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who we have mentioned and we have said is closer to us than our jugular vein. He's closer to us than even we are. And we discussed why He's mentioned the jugular vein last week. When we make any of these statements have got the weight of mountains. There's a reason why in Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. That if we had revealed this Quran upon a mountain, you would have seen it shatter out of awe of Allah. This is not something small. This is something very serious. It's very easy for us. I know, even myself sometimes, we fall into these traps. You come in, you recite a dua, and you need to hurry, so you recite it really quickly, really fast. You eat up half the words. It happens. Sometimes when we're praying, we sometimes eat up half the words. We know we're saying them, but we're not giving them the respect and the dignity and the sharaf that they deserve. This is very important. Because sometimes some people have this misguided understanding that if I take my time to pray, a namaz, standard, say Maghrib will take me 7 minutes, 5 minutes. Whereas if I rush it a little bit, it'll take me 3 minutes. But in your rushing it, you've wasted those 2 minutes. And the reason we rush is because we don't understand what we're actually doing. We know that we're praying, we know this is a wajibat, we're doing something necessary, of course. But we don't understand what it is. We don't have any ma'rifah of what it is we're doing, why we spend time. Normally, I've found through my experience that as someone gets older, they begin to have more and more ma'rifah and more understanding in prayers and in dua and Quran and all of this. And this is actually not good. It should be through the entire course of our lives. We should all focus on it. 3 minutes and 5 minutes makes no real difference in our lives these days. If you examine a 4 rak'ah prayer, it's going to take, let's say, 5 minutes. Let's say 7 minutes. Keep it simple, okay? 7 minutes. We have Dhuhr and Asr and Isha, which are 4 rak'ah. And you have a 3 rak'ah and a 2 rak'ah. It's nothing. If you balance it all out, it's barely half an hour. Half an hour out of 23 hours, 24 hours leaves you 23 and a half. Take away another 15 minutes for wudu and prepping yourself and everything. Okay, take away another half an hour. Let's say someone does an exceptionally long wudu. It takes 1 hour away. But what you get for that 1 hour is remarkable. Have you ever considered, and I'm going to come to Dua Adila, but this is an important sort of muqaddimah to get through. Have you considered why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to pray at these 5 specific times? Some other people, they pray only on a Sunday. Some other people condense all of their prayers into one prayer in the evening. Why do we as Muslims have 5 discrete times? Even though we Shia, people say we only pray 3 times a day, anyone who comes to a masjid to pray for Dhuhr and Asr, or Maghrib and Isha, you will have a short gap in the middle, at least 10 minutes, where someone does dua, someone do the nawafil. This is normal. So 5 times. Why 5 times? Why first thing in the morning? It's interesting. Sometimes we should spend some time thinking about these things. Instead of just doing, when you want to do something, when you want an activity, when you want to accomplish a task, the first rule of being successful in accomplishing the task is to understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. What is the benefit? Have you considered the movement that we have to make in namaz? The actual physical movements that we have to do, the qiyam, the ruku', sujood. Why these movements? Why has Allah given us, if you like, a formula that first thing in the morning you get up, you stand on your musalla, you're standing, you then go into ruku', you go into sujood, you then sit, you get up again, you go back into ruku', you go into sujood twice again. Why? If you look physiologically at the body, what does it do to the human body when it does that? You see some of these people on TV, they talk about aerobics, exercise in the morning, making your muscles supple, so that in the morning after they've become very stiff and tight, you should do some crazy exercises, some crazy music, and this is going to make you feel good. We have namaz. We have namaz. We've had it for 1400 years. But unfortunately, like we said last week, we begin to take these things for granted because we don't understand the value of this thing. We don't understand what this thing is doing. Even if someone's belief in Allah, yaqeen in the belief of Allah, is weak, if you give them these prescribed movements to any of these sports scientists or physiotherapists or whatever, I don't know, they will tell you this is actually very good exercise. It's aerobic exercise. It spreads out the muscles. It gets the blood flow circulating. And in fact, even some scientists in Iran, I was reading a paper a few years ago now, they said that even the fact that we have to recite namaz in Arabic, the fact we have to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, we have the tashahhud, we have the salam, we have the qunut. All of these, the way that they move the jaw muscles, the way they move your muscles is therapeutic, has a physical benefit, an actual physical benefit, not just a spiritual benefit that you can't touch. Sometimes we Muslims, we people, not even Muslims generally, we forget about Allah because we can't see Him, because we don't have ihsas, we can't touch Him, because He's an abstract idea. But the idea of namaz, every portion of namaz, from the time you put your hand up to the reason why you have to put your hands up for takbiratul ihram, from the time you go into sujood to ruku', all of these have got a physical benefit as well as a spiritual benefit. Because Allah, we know namaz is a manifestation of the justice and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So of course, every breath of it is going to have a value for you. Salawat. Now I could sit down and I could give you hadith upon hadith upon hadith. It's easy, I could do this. But there's no point in that at this time. Because I give you a hadith, the hadith becomes abstract. Imam as-Sadiq said on one sunny day in Medina, XYZ. How does that apply to me here? So the way we need to teach, the way we need to discuss, is we know the ideas. We know the concepts. The concepts are very simple. Everybody knows them. But we need to bring them into our lives. With dua, every dua is a lesson for you. When you recite it, the same way as when you recite namaz. In namaz, we have a very important dua that we make. Surah Al-Fatiha. No namaz is complete without Surah Al-Fatiha. In Surah Al-Fatiha, it refocuses us. So in the morning you get up, of course you do this physical exercise, that has its own place, but you're also reconnecting yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you turn around and say, you wake up in the morning, you say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. If you understand what that means, it means, subhanallah, thank you Allah. All praises for you Allah, that you've given me tawfiq to have another day. And because you've given me this tawfiq to have another day, I am singing your praise. I know that you're the master of the day of judgment. And I know, and I'm saying, and I'm promising you that you are the only one that I worship and the only one that I follow the commands of. And I'm telling you, Allah, you've guided me upon the right way. Keep me upon this right way. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. It can be understood two ways, this ayah. Ihdina means guide us too. So for some Muslims, they say Ameen after this. For us, we're not allowed to say Ameen. But that shouldn't make us arrogant. Because even though we say that we're Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, it's not enough to say that you're a Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen. It's not enough for you to say that I am a Shia. This is not enough. Talk is cheap. Anyone can turn around and say, I'm a Shia. This is true. Anyone can come along and say with their tongue. The tongue is, it's an instrument without a bone. It can say anything. The media uses the tongue to tell you that one man is a criminal who is guilty, who is innocent, and to tell you that the guilty one is innocent and that the innocent one is guilty. The tongue can lie. A'malu bin niyyah. Your actions will reflect your intention. Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha, he also says that sometimes the words that come out of your mouth will reflect what your innermost desires are, even though you want to hide them. And this is another proof of the applicability of every ayah of Quran on every sphere of the human existence. We have the famous ayah, وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. We know this one, we've all seen Mukhtar Nameh. It's been at the beginning of it all the time, and it's a famous ayah connected to Karbala. It means that, and those people who have oppressed, who have done dhulm, they will very soon see that the results of that will be against them. This applies to me as Shabir, as well as to Yazid, as well as to anyone else. If I have done dhulm, if I have done an injustice, if I have done something wrong, be it to myself, be it to one of my brothers, or be it to the rest of the world, very soon I will get my comeuppance. I will see the results of that. I may become very arrogant and think I'm a big businessman, I've swindled everyone, khalas. No one's going to do anything or say anything. But mark my words, that money, you will never have the tawfiq to use it. I'll tell you a story one of my teachers used to say, but give me a salawat first. He used to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has apportioned the rizq for everyone from point zero. Moment a person comes into this world, and even before that, because we discussed Allah operates outside of time and space. But Allah has organized the rizq for someone regardless. That person's rizq is there. Rizq is not just food, it is your income, it is everything. If I swindle my brother over there, and instead of taking 1 glass of water, I take 2 glasses of water, mark my words, and test this even yourselves, I will only be able to drink 1 glass of water. That second glass of water, something will happen to it. If I'm in a masjid, for example, one example I heard at some other place, or I experienced at another place. You go to a center, someone's giving Fatiha, and some people, they don't like you, so they bypass you. Unfortunately, it happens, sadly. And someone else takes that Fatiha. This person who was doing this narrated this for me, so I'm telling you directly what I was told. He said that he took this extra Fatiha home, but he had to throw it away. He had to throw it away. He couldn't eat it. It became impossible for him to eat it. Not because he became too stuffed or anything. No. How much was his portion? He was able to eat. Whatever was extra that he didn't have the right to stayed in his fridge, but somehow became bad. This requires us to think, to reflect. Your rizq is organized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If this water on my table over here is not from my rizq, I'm not going to have tawfiq to drink it. I'd love to have tawfiq to drink it, but if it's not my rizq, it will fall down on the floor, or someone else will take it. I will not have the tawfiq to use it. And that's not just for food and water, it's for everything in your existence. You see, many people, they make a lot of money. They make a lot of wealth. How does it help them? We know in Quran, there are people who are very wealthy, but who were considered wrong. That's not to say being wealthy is wrong, no. It's the means of attaining that wealth. This is what I'm discussing. You have Abu Lahab. About Abu Lahab, of course, we all know who Abu Lahab is. We say in Quran, Allah Ta'ala says, مَا أَغْنَى عَنْهُ مَالُهُ وَمَا كَسَبَ. That his wealth, and he was very wealthy, will have no use for him. He'll have a mountain of gold, but it'll just be sitting there. It'll have no value for him. It'll not be able to benefit him in any way. Reason why I'm saying all of this is because we need to become conscious of our responsibility to Allah, because Allah is conscious of His responsibility to us. Allah knows what we are going to do. He knows, like I said last week, this tasbih I'm putting over here, before I put it over here, He knows that I've done that and that I'm going to do that. His knowledge cannot be described. Like Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Alhamdulillah alladhi la yablughu midhatahu al-qa'ilun, that this is Allah. All praise be to this entity whose description is impossible to define. You cannot describe him. Ours is but to adhere to his commandments. Not because he is a slave driver, but because these commandments in this environment that we think we control is the only way we will attain salvation and be successful. If we think that we as humanity, we've become big people now with all this technology and science and everything, and we know everything about the environment, one small insect can come along and throw that entire equation into disarray. We know nothing. We know nothing. We think we do. But Shaitan also, if you remember, Shaitan, in his discussion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he was asked to bow down before Adam, his argument was what? Come on, man, how can I bow down towards this man? You created me from fire, you created him from earth. I am better than him. And so what happened? Aba wastakbara wa kana minal kafirin. I could go into explaining that ayah, but I won't, because we'll digress the discussion so much that it'll be on this side, and I'll have to drag it with a big rope to come back to the subject. So give me a salawat and we try and continue. So coming on to the idea of dua adila. Dua adila is very important for everyone. Everyone should, it's a very short dua. It takes maybe 7-10 minutes to recite at a sensible pace. And if you recite it and you understand it and you apply it in your life, inshallah, you will be protected from adila. Adila is the last stage when you're in the process of dying, when shaitan comes along to manipulate your ideas. He whispers something crazy in your ear, and because your belief is weak, because your belief is broken in some way, you listen to him. And you destroy an entire lifetime of good work with your aqibah being a waste. So let's examine how this dua operates. How many of you have come across dua adila before? Give me just a brief show of hands. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Those of you who are reading muwaffaqeen, inshallah. Those of you who aren't, maybe try. It's easy. If you need a copy, please let me know. I'll pass it on to you. And it's available. Just do a search for ADEELA, and you will find so many PDFs are available with the Arabic, with transliteration, everything. Now dua, every dua. Sorry, again, before we start, there needs to be a little bit more explanation. I apologize. Every dua is a discussion with someone that you are in awe of, that you have a huge amount of respect for. There are many formula for dua. Just like, when you're going to look for a job, you have a formula that you put down in your resume. You have to do a particular type of covering letter. When you want to apply to a university, you have to write a particular type of covering letter. A dua has the same type of mechanism. Of course, alhamdulillah, we who follow the school of Ahlul Bayt, we're very fortunate, because Ahlul Bayt have given us the best formulas for reciting dua, and in fact have given us what we could call model answers. But that doesn't mean the dua has to be only what is written down in the books. This is the best type. But there's nothing stopping you sitting down and having a discussion with Allah. But in order to have a discussion, you need to know the correct protocol, the correct etiquette of discussing with someone. Generally, the formula is very simple. Consider a young child, who wants something great, something big from his father or mother. The first thing you do is you say, "Oh, my mother, you're such a lovely person. You looked after me when I was young. You cared for me. You do all of this for me." I think the word we use is chamchagiri in our culture, right? Of course, this is not what I'm saying we're doing to Allah, but the formula to explain it becomes a lot simpler with this type of understanding. So first you say something nice about them, but It's not only saying something nice. You know that your mum likes sponge cake, for example. You know your mother likes sponge cake with jam in the middle. So you say, "Oh, my mother, you know that I love you, and I know that you love this sponge cake, and I promise that I will make you this sponge cake." For example, I'm using a very simple, trivial example to try and get the point across. You then make this sponge cake for her. You prove to her that your love is real, that you're really going to make this sponge cake for her. You're not just saying because you want this new thing. And you give her that, "Look, I have made this sponge cake in your honor because I know you love it, because you're important to me." And then you say, "Oh, my mother, please help me buy such and such thing." The possibility of your mother accepting or your father accepting goes up by orders of magnitude. I'm not telling the kids to start using this mechanism, but it's just an idea to understand. Salawat. If you look at any dua that we have from Ahlul Bayt, any dua, you will see it follows a formula very similar to this. Unfortunately, the portion where I said that my mother loves, for example, the sponge cake, and that I testify that she loves the sponge cake, I've forgotten to actually make it for her. If I don't make it for her, of course she's a mother, and Allah is Rahman Rahim. But if you make the sponge cake, it will be faster for you to get what you desire. So let's look at Dua Adila. So it starts, of course, with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Then it starts with a very interesting line. It says, "Shahid Allahu annahu la ilaha illa huwa wal malaikatu wa ulil ilm qa'iman bil qist la ilaha illa huwa al azizul hakim." Now this means, I'll give you the meaning, then we try and discuss it. It means that Allah Himself is testifying that there is no one worthy of worship except Him. Allah Himself is saying that there is no one worthy of worship except Him. And the angels, who of course we know are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are also saying this. Then it becomes interesting. وَأُولِي الْعِلْمِ قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ. This means, and those people who have wisdom and who stand for justice. In the dua, we could have said, potentially, that, and those people who are Muslims say this, because of course there is no Muslim who doesn't say this. Why are we being told, and why is Allah saying, or why are we being told to recite this dua in this terminology? Why those people who have wisdom or knowledge and who establish justice and who are firm on justice? Why? Let me try and explain. In the history of Islam, we have a character who nowadays we call Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl. We call him Abu Jahl, the father of ignorance. But his original name was Abu al-Hakam, which means the father of wisdom. In the time of pre-Islamic Arabia, he was considered an alim. He was considered someone who was extremely well-known, well-learned. Leave Abu Jahl. Shaitan, Iblis. Iblis, anyone who tells you that Iblis is not knowledgeable or doesn't believe in Allah is a liar. Out of every Shia alive today, there is no one who has that level of yaqeen about Allah as Iblis. Iblis knows Allah intimately, very intimately. But what did he do? He didn't establish justice. He had wisdom. He had wisdom. But he didn't establish justice. He broke down at that point. When Allah gave him a command to do something, you know, in any scenario, you have a relationship between two individuals. For example, the relationship between a student and a teacher, between a young man and an older man, between a parent and the children. In these relationships, there is a degree of intimacy, of samimiyat, where you're close to someone. You could joke with someone. You can play games. You can have a bit of a laugh. But there are red lines. There are times where you must listen. There are times where you can sit down and say, oh no, I don't want to do this. I don't agree with this. And you have a debate. But there are certain times where you must do something. I'll give you a very simple example. Consider you're going on a driving lesson. I'm assuming everyone here knows how to drive and has been through driving lessons, so the example will make sense. You're in your instructor's car. Your driving instructor and yourself, you have a nice relationship. He is your friend or she is your friend. And you're talking about the football or the weather or whatever. And you're disagreeing with your driving instructor about whatever. All of a sudden, your driving instructor says, stop. Are you going to sit down and debate with them, or are you going to put your foot on the brake? Your foot is going to go on the brake, no questions. You might ask questions later on, but your foot is on the brake without any question. The same way. And why is your foot on the brake? Because you know that your driving instructor in this scenario has authority over you, has a form of wilaya upon you, has a form of authority upon you, in that they are training you for a given task. Is everyone still with me? Sorry, those of you who maybe haven't heard me speak before, I need some response from the audience, otherwise I get very scared and very nervous. So if you're still with me, give me a loud salawat. The reason why we respond straight away to the driving instructor and we immediately put our foot on the brake and then discuss it later if we do, most of the time we forget and we just say, my God, what happened? Is because the driving instructor, in the context of that driving lesson, this is important so that people don't misunderstand me, has a wilaya, an authority over you in that domain, only in that domain. This is very important. If we look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know Allah's authority upon us is infinite and eternal. Before we are born and after we are not on this world and are in the next place. But spheres of authority change. A parent has authority over the child. A teacher has authority over the students. Sometimes we become very arrogant and we start talking about, this person is an alim, he doesn't know what he's talking about, whatever. Sometimes we become like this, unfortunately. And sometimes we're right to do that. But sometimes we have to be careful. Because whenever we speak about someone or speak against someone in any scenario, if it's shaitan or if it's iblis or if it's anyone, masalan, Mukhtar, the famous Mukhtar that all of us love and respect. That Mukhtar, previously, for many years, his name was very blackened by the Muslims. He was insulted very much. People used to say that he was in it for his own power, his own authority. So we have to make sure we understand the whole scenario before we make any claims. But this idea of why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, وَأُولِي الْعِلْمِ قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ? He's telling us, why are we being told this? We're being given a formula for someone who genuinely testifies to the Tawheed of Allah. A requirement of that person is a person who has wisdom. Ulil ilm doesn't just mean people with these clothes. In fact, sadly, sometimes there are people with these clothes who have no ilm. We know this to be the case. Ulil ilm are people who have a degree of knowledge And that knowledge can be anything within the appropriate context. But what knowledge they have, they apply with justice, with dignity. You can have, I know students who have been to Hawza for many, many years, but they don't apply what they've learnt. And there is nothing worse than someone who is an alim who does not apply what he or she has learnt. It is the worst person who does this. This is why we have very reliable riwayat which say that 40,000 from the ulama are going to have their heads cut by Imam Mahdi's sword. 40,000. It's not a small number. It's not an exact number. When we get numbers like this in riwayat, they're not exact numbers. The idea is to say this is a large number. Right? So we are being told that the people who are reliable, who testify to Allah's Tawheed, are those people within the human sphere who have wisdom, who have ilm, and who establish justice, meaning they operate on the ilm they have. A person who knows, who has the ilm that stealing is wrong. Any type of stealing is wrong. Someone who has that knowledge. If they then steal, leave that they've committed a great sin. That's on one side. But what they have actually done is operated outside of justice. They have betrayed that wisdom and that knowledge that they have that tells them doing this is wrong. The same way you take a child. Let's say you have a fireplace, one of these open fires, and your child is playing around over there. Of course, you're going to be worried. You're going to want to stop the child touching that fire. But na'uzubillah, let's say the child touches the fire once. It develops the information and the knowledge that this fire bad, it burns, it makes problems for me. There's a very high possibility the child will never touch that fire again. Okay, nowadays children and everyone are conditioned to do slightly crazy things, but I'm talking generally, right? The fire burns, I won't go away and touch the fire. I'll take precautions. If we know something is wrong and we do it, then we have created a problem with our own adalah. So let's move on. It then says, La ilaha illa huwa al-azizul hakim. Why do we say again that there is no God except Him, and He is the Almighty and the All-Wise, Al-Hakim? Because we are telling ourselves, Allah of course knows that He is this, but we're telling ourselves that Allah is the Almighty, meaning that He can do anything. And that He is all-wise, meaning that He knows everything about us. It's a reminder for ourselves. We then say in this dua, Inna deena indallahi Islam, that the ideology, the system, the religion, although religion is not the right word for deen, because unfortunately in this day and age, the word religion has been confined to the mosques or the churches and all of this stuff. Deen is something which encompasses every facet of your life. Be it you going to the office, going to work, the system you live around, everything. Whether you live in a Muslim country or not is neither here nor there. The rules of Islam still apply to you. We as Muslims, we live in a non-Muslim country. We can't go and eat haram meat. We have to go and look for halal meat. We have to be sure it's halal and go away. So of course, for us, deen operates outside the masjid as well as inside the masjid. Then we say something very interesting. وَأَنَا الْعَبْدُ الضَّعِيفُ الْمُذْنِبُ الْعَاصِي الْمُحْتَاجُ الْحَقِيرُ. We are then admitting to Allah that we are with problems. We say that, and I am a feeble, small servant. I am sinful. I am guilty. I am insignificant, I am needy, and I'm destitute, meaning that I cannot do anything without your assistance. this should also be something that refocuses us on who we are. Compared to Allah, we are muhtaj. We are insignificant. We are needy. Because Allah has full authority. We have nothing. In the munajat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the one he recited in Masjid Kufa, or rather he gave to Malik Ashtar, who recited it in Masjid Kufa, the famous one where we say Mawlai ya Mawlai, normally we recite it in Shahr Ramadan. In that munajat, we're telling Allah that Anta al-Rabb wa ana al-Marbub, wa hal yarhamu al-Marbuba illa al-Rabb. That you are the Lord, the Master, the authority, and I am the one who has authority put on top of them, who is subservient. And who is going to be kind and merciful to the subservient except the Lord? These are not just words. We have to feel them. We have to understand when we turn around and we say that I am that slave, that small, insignificant, sinful, guilty slave who is in need of you, we should understand this. And this should bring tears to our eyes because we understand our position with regard to Allah. And this fights that ghafla that I spoke about last week, that negligence that comes along and starts burning away at your belief. It doesn't stop you praying, doesn't stop you fasting, doesn't stop you doing any of your ibadat. It just tears your heart into pieces. So you become like a robot doing these things, but not getting any value from these things. The intrinsic value has its place, but you get no real value from it. You then say that I'm giving testimony. I am saying now. Now you, the one reciting dua, you are saying, Ashhadu limun'imi wa khaliqi wa raziqi wa mukri kama shahida li dhati. That this testimony that I am now giving, that my Lord, my Creator, the one who sustains me and the one who supports me, I give it in the same way that He gives for Himself. Meaning Allah is saying that I am the Creator. Allah says, Ana al-Khaliq, I am the Creator. We are then saying in this segment that I am also saying that yes, without a doubt, I have yaqeen, I have certainty that you are the Creator. The moment you say that, anything else that masquerades as a deity in your life, as a God in your life, doesn't mean you do sujood to that person or that thing. It means that your life revolves around that thing. Could it be the money? Could it be the authority? Could it be the power? Who is your God? Over here you're saying that my God, I testify that my God is the one who is the Creator. Do we know anyone else who can create? No. He is the one who is the sustainer. Yes, okay, Asda will say we sustain you. We give you food, for example. But turn around and ask Asda to give you air, to create air. They can't. The same way like Ibrahim, when Namrud said to him that, okay, Ibrahim, you worship this God who you say brings life and takes life. Brings two slaves, kills one, gives the other. Says, okay, I gave life and I gave death. So what did Ibrahim say to him? Ibrahim said to him something amazing. If we understand it, we will begin to understand what's going on really. He said, okay, my God is the one who makes the sun to rise from the east. Tomorrow morning you make it rise in the west. Then you've got my attention. Of course, they can't do this. No matter what they tell you. Because you see, in this world, Shaitan has promised, and I'm going to finish in the next 5 minutes. We've only done one page of Dua Adila. This is the problem when you begin discussing these du'as and thinking about them, and even I've not gone into the depth that I wanted to. I've been very shallow. Inshallah, at some stage in the future, we can get in more depth. But what this tells you is, in this world, we live in a situation where no one forbids us from praying or fasting or doing dua or having majalis. They have no problem with this. What they have a problem with is that ma'rifah, that understanding. As long as when you come to a center and you listen to a masjid, a majlis, and you do ma'tam, and you do azar, and you do munajat, as long as that doesn't ignite a fire in your heart that makes you think that, oh Allah, all of this stuff that I'm doing, am I really doing it for you? Am I really being honest? If I'm at work, am I really, if my work tells me I have to work 7.5 hours, am I really doing that? Am I really working my hours, or am I cheating? When I do business with someone, am I really being fair? Something which cost me £1, I'm selling to that person for £1.50. Okay, that's fine. But I see someone else and I know he's rich, I'm selling for £2. Is that right? No. All of these little things, these small things that seem insignificant. See, shaitan, he's clever. We have to understand. In Quran, Allah says so many times, He says, we say in Surah Yasin, which we all recite all the time, regular. Alam a'had ilaykum ya bani Adam an la ta'budu shaitan. Innahu lakum aduwwun mubin. That, O children of Adam, and we are all children of Adam. And it's important that Allah is saying, Alam a'had ilaykum ya bani Adam, not ya ummat Muhammad, not ya Shia, not ya ummat Ibrahim. Ya bani Adam, meaning all of humanity, Muslim and non-Muslim. Alam ahad ilaykum ya bani Adam an la ta'budu shaitan, that do not worship shaitan. Does anyone really do sajda to shaitan? Apart from these psychotic Satanists, but we won't go into that. Generally, who worships shaitan? No one. Obviously, on the surface of it, no one worships shaitan. Everyone knows, every religion, every system knows that shaitan is something negative. So why is Allah telling us, Alam a'ad ilaykum ya bani Adam an la ta'budu shaitan? Allah is not going to say something which is pointless. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Nothing is said except that there is a powerful meaning and an understanding behind it. If Allah is saying to all of creation that don't worship shaitan, that implies that there are people who follow shaitan. Doesn't mean they make sujood to shaitan. What is shaitan's task? What is his main ibadah? لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. That I will misguide all of them. So he takes your religion that you think you're following. He takes that system that you think you're following, be it Christianity, be it Judaism, be it Islam, be it whatever, and he manipulates it. He breaks it. He tarnishes it. You still think that you're a Muslim. You still think you're fasting, you're going to Hajj, you're doing this, you're doing that. You're doing your sadaqat and everything. But something is broken. Something is broken. Something is damaged. This is where we have to be careful. Now, I don't want these lectures to become all doom and gloom, because that's not the way I am. But these are serious subjects, and it's important for us to understand. You see, if we understand all of these du'as that we recite just through the course of a week, a normal week, we will have a revolution inside our hearts. Our entire life will change. Our outlook on everything will change. If you look at the people behind you in the pictures, you have Imam Khomeini, you have Sayyid Sistani, Sayyid al-Khoi, and Sayyid al-Qa'id. These people are not ma'soom. They were never ma'soom. But we look at them as our leaders. Why? Because what these people have done is they have understood Allah. only to a fraction of the level of a ma'soom, to a tiny level by comparison to a ma'soom. But they give us hope, the same way Salman al-Farisi and Abu Dhar Ghaffari and Malik Ashtar and even Mukhtar Thaqafi, all these people, the hope they give us that actually we can't become Ali ibn Abi Talib because Ali ibn Abi Talib was ma'soom. We can't become Fatima al-Zahra because Fatima al-Zahra was ma'soom. But actually, we've got people who we are blessed enough to live in the same time as, that we can try and emulate, try and become closer to. And in fact, in obeying them, in listening to the Maraji and the Wali Faqih, we are actually, and this is Allah's mercy upon us, we are actually following the wilayah of Imam al-Mahdi Ajalla Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Because of course Imam Mahdi has told us that in my greater ghaibah, you must follow the fuqaha. And he gives a series of qualities, I'm not going to go into that. And in following Imam Mahdi, we're following all of the Ahlul Bayt. And of course Rasulullah, and following Rasulullah means you're following Allah. So for us to come back, round it back to where we started, Usul ad-Din is the thing that is going to take us to the next day and be successful. We can't follow anyone in Usul ad-Din. Taqleed in Usul ad-Din is haram. You cannot emulate someone in Usul ad-Din. However, Furu' ad-Din, it's necessary for you to do taqleed. You must follow someone who is more learned than you, unless of course you're a mujtahid yourself, but that's a different discussion. But you must follow a mujtahid, a marja. And one of the subjects we will discuss further as we progress through these days is this idea of taqleed. Because taqleed is not something where you just you blindly just go about your life and you just follow this and you don't think. It also isn't the idea of asking questions to the point of, pardon my language, but silliness. You know, we have to learn from the people who Amir al-Mu'mineen had around him. And one of the most important lessons in this context is when Amir al-Mu'mineen said, Saluni, saluni qabla an tafqiduni, that ask me before you lose me. One of these badbakht people turned around and said, what? How many hairs on my head? We mustn't become like that poor guy when discussing with the Maraji and asking them questions to which we know the answer, but we want to only test them. Because this is a sifat of Bani Israel which we'll come into as we progress. And it's one of the reasons why they are among the people who Allah turned away from. Anyway, with that, I think we'll try and finish because I don't want to tire everyone out. And inshallah, we ask Allah to accept our small ibadat and to accept our small activities. And we ask Allah to keep us all aware of Him and to prevent us from becoming ghafil and negligent of Him. We ask us to help us, and we ask Him to help us understand the true Islam of Muhammad and to be loyal to that true Islam of Muhammad. We ask Him to hasten the return of our Master, Imam Mahdi Ajalla Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and to count us among those people who are His real followers and those who inshaAllah attain martyrdom at His command. Ya Allah, we ask You to protect and bless all of the Muslims. Ya Allah, we ask You to protect all of those Muslims who are being hurt and being harmed by the current situation across the world. Ya Allah, we ask You to protect all of those mustad'afeen, all of those people who are oppressed, be they in Palestine, in Iraq, in Syria, in Bahrain. Ya Allah, we ask You to free all of those innocent people who have been kidnapped and are arrested by the despotic regimes like Abdul Hadi al-Khawaja in Bahrain. Ya Allah, we ask You to protect all of the ulama, all of the righteous ulama, all of the maraji, and especially the leader, Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Wa akhiru da'wan, alhamdulillah.